All right, everybody. It's a beautiful Sunday morning here. Rudy Campos Jr., Coach Dio, and we're welcoming our newest member to the Fantasy Countdown team. Normally, we see Trey Collis here. Trey's on vacation for Sunday today. He'll be joining us well, but we'd like to welcome Will Haverland, a good friend of mine, to the Fantasy Countdown. Will's going to be joining us pretty much every Sunday to talk fantasy football because here at the Fantasy Countdown, we make all your fantasy wins a reality. Will, thanks for joining us this morning, man.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this.
Excited. I know. I've been seeing you talking to me about some fantasy, trying to pick my brain, and I'm assuming you want to win all your leagues. That's why you're joining this fantasy countdown thing.
Got to win the family league, man.
Well, Rudy also gives advice on picking Daniel Jones, but I'll leave that alone.
Hey,
Well, we're not talking quarterbacks today. That's for damn sure because the most important part about fantasy football lately and every single year has been running backs. And this year, running backs have pretty much, man, they're pretty not available. They're not available as much this year as they are past years. You've got very slim pickings this year, and when I say slim pickings, I'm talking maybe what 9, 10 running backs that are going to be elite this year, which normally in past years you see a lot more running backs. But guys, real quick before we get into the running back talk here, uh, for the running backs itself, are you seeing the same trend as I am, where these running backs are just they're going to be so slim, far fetched that you've got to draft them early, like big time this year?
Probably. I mean, it's kind of the same thing every year. I mean, people normally draft running backs early, so the best of the best kind of go in that first early round, and then that second half portion, it kind of depends what your draft strategy is. Right? I'll see people draft if they're drafting late, they may go receiver, then running back, or running back, receiver. So I think depending on your draft strategy or what pick you're selecting, it may kind of trend towards on what goes what, but definitely running backs, you know, those are probably the cream of the crop. But there's some other guys kind of waiting in those later rounds that you could pick up, like a James Robinson. I mean, last season, really, this guy went undrafted, and you could pick him up on the waiver wire. What does he do? He runs for like over 1,000 yards, has about 8 touchdowns. So for the running back position, you want to get the best of the best, but there's definitely going to be guys in those later rounds that you can wait for, potentially could have a breakout season.
Yeah, Will, you and I were talking about Jonathan Taylor out of Indianapolis. We'll get more into depth with him. But when we were talking about it, you brought up some points. Like we were talking, these running backs that had good years last year necessarily may not have really good years this year. And that's why when we bring up the list, you're going to see a few names low on the list as well, because the potential there is not the potential for them having the same kind of type of season isn't there. Is that the same trend that you're seeing as well?
yeah, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the big names go early. A lot of running backs in the first 2.5 rounds because there's so many wide receivers. Wide receivers so deep, you can get those late. Um, and then, like Gio said, you can take some flyers on some of these younger running backs, some of these sneakier ones. That's why some of my sleepers are sleepers, but I think they're going to be top 10 running backs potentially in this year.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure, man. We're gonna get into some sleepers for running back, but let's hit to the list. We got to get to the list now. Again, this is the fantasy countdown. We'll be with you every single Sunday from 10 to 11, getting all your fantasy lineups ready for you guys. The first couple of weeks here, we're gonna just go through our list of fantasy players, who you want to draft. We're gonna give you ideas on which guys to draft, possibly which rounds, and then once the season starts, we'll be giving you those fantasy lineups that are gonna be, I want to say guaranteed wins, but there's nothing guaranteed in life because you could have an injury. As my season kind of sucked last year with drafting a couple of guys, and then I just had Michael Thomas too in a few leagues, and that just sucked overall. So we're gonna try to provide y'all with everything. This is brought to you by Project Spurs Network. Go like, go share, go follow them. Everything Spurs related, you want to get them. We're also adding some football coverage to them as well, and also sponsored by DraftKings as well. Hey, DraftKings, you want to get that daily fantasy lineup? Go to DraftKings, sign up now. First you got to do is put that deposit in, select which leagues you want to do actually in there, which drafts you want to get into. But before you make those selections, watch us. We're guaranteed to give you those winning lineups. heading over to the rankings. Let's get into the rankings, man. Running back rankings. Waste no time here. Obviously, we see the number one ranked guy, Christian McCaffrey, kind of a head scratcher in some senses because you've got who is it, Sam Darnold as the quarterback in Carolina. Not many people are high on Sam Darnold, thinking that that's going to affect Christian McCaffrey a whole lot. That's something that we're going to discuss as well, going down the list. Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler to round out the top 10. Gio, as far as Christian McCaffrey goes, are we going to see an uptick in production from McCaffrey, or are we going to see almost a downtick? Because if you look at it, Teddy Bridgewater compared to Sam Darnold, Bridgewater played really well last season. McCaffrey had the injuries. Are we going to see some kind of trend of him going up in this year's fantasy football league?
I think he'll be fine. I mean, the quarterback play hasn't been extremely great for him, even with Cam Newton was there. So I think McCaffrey will be fine. It sucked last year. I drafted him number one in one of my leagues and still happened to make the playoffs because of Antonio Gibson and James Robinson. But I think you're continuing to see that upward in production. I think Sam Darnold's going to have to play well, though. I mean, and I think he will. I think he'll play decent enough to continue that fantasy value for Christian McCaffrey. So I'm going to give him a thumbs up. I think you still have to draft him within those first 5 picks. But obviously coming off of an injury, you have to be concerned with re-injury or just kind of rusty, right? I mean, the guy hasn't played in a very long time. So there's slight concern, but I think production will still be there. Going to, they use him at receiver. They put him out wide. I mean, they do tons of things with McCaffrey. So it's not necessarily just a rushing. So I think in this case, he's good to go. Ezekiel Elliott, not 100% sure on him, but for Christian McCaffrey, who does everything, I think he'll be fine in that offense.
Yeah, Will, actually, Gio brought it up with Ezekiel Elliott here. We saw, previous years with Zeke Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys, obviously having one of the best offensive lines in the past for the Dallas Cowboys helped. But with Dak going down last season, all these defenses just basically berated and just took on Zeke left and right. Didn't have the season everybody was predicting. Dak is back healthy. It's still the question mark. We know how healthy Dak is. Are we going to see Zeke Elliott just go back to being his normal fantasy productive self this season?
I'm high on Zeke. I think Zeke's going back to where he was the first 4 seasons in the league. I think they're going to use him. The line's back. Dak's going to be back there. I think that's going to be all of Zeke needs for mental health. You got enough wide receiver help. They can't stack the box and plug Zeke up. I think they're going to split him out, use him, catch some more balls, use him a little bit different than they had last year because that's all they had. No offensive line.
Yeah.
They just need help, and I think Zeke's got it with his best friend back on the field.
Yeah, that's true. And I think we're going to see a pretty big uptick in Zeke's production this season. So really, guys, if we're looking at the top 15 running backs right here, one name that actually stands out to me is the guy we have at number 14, CEH, last year's, big-time rookie when it came to fantasy football, Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of Kansas City. I've got some people asking me a few times, why am I so low on CEH right now? Mahomes and the Chiefs, let's be real, it's a passing attack. We're not going to see a whole lot of ground and pound. That's why CEH is probably down right around the 15 range right now. Are we still going to see him being drafted and guys reaching for him in the first 2 rounds? That's the question that I've kind of posed to myself. If you're asking me on that, I don't think you go with CEH in the first 2 rounds. I think he's still a 3rd, 4th round guy for me, and you're going to get some value out of him, but a lot of it's just going to be in the passing game. So for you guys, we'll start off with Gio here. With CEH being there on a productive and an explosive offense, do you see him going anywhere in round 1 or 2? Because last year I saw him being drafted in the first round, late in the first round, but always guaranteed to be drafted in the 2nd round. This year, I don't think you take him that high, but do you guys see that he could be drafted in rounds 1 or 2 again this season?
Well, last year I kind of had some late picks, and he was always sitting there. I normally went with Josh Jacobs of the Raiders just because of the volume. But I think the Chiefs retooled the offensive line from top to bottom we saw in the Super Bowl how exposed they had. They couldn't run the football whatsoever. Now, Tampa's defense is very good, but this is a team that wants to run the football. Andy Reid's had some great running backs in the past, Jamal Charles, LaShawn McCoy, and different types of other style backs. I think they want to get CH more involved in that offense, and I think you're going to see maybe a little bit more of a balanced offense. This team has been very pass-heavy, and they will continue to be pass-heavy and take their shots down the field. But with an offensive line that's been completely retooled from the Super Bowl, I think Andy Reid knows that in order to probably get back there and win a Super Bowl, you're going to have some sort of a running game. So I think this is a team that will put a little bit more focus on the running game, get CH more involved. And I'm not saying he's going to be a Jamal Charles type of player, but I do think that his second year in the NFL, a little bit more relaxed, more comfortable within the system, I think he takes another step. I'm looking at him at more of the second round, Rudy, middle to second late. But as I tell people all the time, if you value him, go get him. I mean, don't worry about where his ADP is, where his consensus is. If you want to draft him in the second round or late first round, go right ahead.
Yeah, Will, are you seeing what do you feel about CEH? Because I mean, Gio says, if you're gonna go get him. I still am not high on him for whatever reason. I mean, the reason why I am not high on him is just because of the pass happy attack that Andy Reid has in Kansas City. And when you've got Patrick Mahomes, it makes total sense. Plus, you got the wideouts to do it too. CEH going in the first 2 rounds, do you see that happening, or is it best to maybe just grab him in the third or fourth if he's there?
I mean, I'm seeing him probably late second round, early third round. With Gio, I mean, he was right. Andy Reid wants to run the football. Problem is, I think Kansas City's got plug-and-play players. Look at the backups. Darrell Williams, Jamal Williams, all those guys in the back, they all have the same style of run. You don't have a big power back, or you don't have the big change of speed back like in some of these other places, like in Cleveland. You got your power back and Chubb, and then you got your change of pace with Kareem Hunt. All 3 of those guys have the same. They all catch balls. They all go run down the middle. They're all the same. So I feel like they're a plug and play. But I think with him being second year and seeing what's going on and what happened in the Super Bowl, Andy Reid's going to prove that they want to run the football. They're not just fling it and let it fly, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill style, or Travis Kelce for that fact.
Yeah. So I'm going to stick with Will on this one. Jonathan Taylor at 9, Indianapolis. This is kind of a head scratcher because you see Carson Wentz, who's been injured, and actually last I saw that he was actually reported to be back by week 1 lately for Carson Wentz. Also, you're getting some of the offensive line back by week 1 as well. I think Quentin Nelson was coming back as well. So Jonathan Taylor is kind of that head scratcher for me because you brought up some points where if he's running to the right side of the line, it's X number of yards. Running to the left side of the line, X number of yards. Give everybody your take on the Jonathan Taylor situation in Indianapolis because it could affect actually his ADP on where you draft him. So give us that insight on what you felt as far as Jonathan Taylor goes for the Indianapolis Colts.
For me, depending on what happens with these injuries, I mean, Taylor drops down to at least the second round for me, maybe the third, but it all depends on Q if he comes back. I mean, if he runs to the left, he was averaging 4.6 yards or something like that, top 4 in the NFL before he was touched. And if he ran to the opposite side, the right side, he was 2.3, which is like, what did I say, like 27th ranked in the league?
Yeah, I think it's 27.
I mean, I think he might struggle in the beginning of the season, but down the road, he's going to get you what you need. He's going to be a playoff push guy, but do you want to take someone that might struggle in the first 2 rounds, 3 rounds maybe, that can't help your team in the early rounds? It got me last year. I got Raheem Mostert, great player, right? Hurt, couldn't stay on the field. When he was in, it was a great play, but he was my second round pick. It hurt me all year last year. I mean, I'm afraid Taylor could be that guy. It could be that guy this year. You know what happens with your left tackle and having feet injuries.
That's kind of the way I felt when I drafted Saquon last year, and a few of my drafts just kind of like sucked the whole life out of me. So
that sucks the whole energy out.
It does when your number 1 pick, in your first round just goes down, and you're like, oh crap, you're pretty much done for your season after that. Almost.
That's why in fantasy you got to have a mixture of both, right? You have to have your heavy hitters, and then those guys that could break out. Like we saw Antonio Gibson last year towards the end of the year before he had turf toe, but he was playing at a very high level. James Robinson was playing very well. J.K. Dobbins started to pick up at the end of the year. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and we're gonna stick here. This is the fantasy countdown. Will Haverland, Coach Gio, Rudy Campos Jr., Trey Collis will be back next week. Presented to you by Project Spurs and DraftKings. So we're gonna stick with the top 10 running backs here for just a little while longer. As I said, you've got Saquon, who normally Saquon is normally one or two. You would say easily every single year, pass catching running back. Can get to the lines, can break on the outside, can bust him out for long yardage. I mean, just explosive speed. But now we've got him out of the top five. Gio, seed Saquon out of the top five. Does that scare you to take him? Even if let's say you really are not high on Zeke because you don't know the Dak situation. And say because of the quarterback situation in New Orleans, Kamara is not going to probably give you that production you feel. Do you see Saquon going up into the top four in most people's draft, maybe even top three? I mean, for me, I'm looking at McCaffrey, Cook, and then I like Henry third. I mean, you really can't go against their King Henry there. But then after that third pick, I could go with the Saquon Barkley just because I don't have confidence in what's going on in New Orleans. And I don't know if I have the confidence that Dak is truly back in Dallas yet. So can you see Saquon jumping up into the top four? Like I said, maybe even possibly top three?
it could. I mean, volume is the key, right? Who can get those most touches, whether it's receiving or rushing the football? I think Saquon, I don't know what the Giants plan on doing. Do they plan on easing him back, right? Limiting touches. That's not great for fantasy purposes. Obviously, if he gets touchdowns, then it's great. But Saquon could kind of ink up there because Alvin Kamara with the Saints, we don't know what's going to happen, right? Jameis Winston, he's always trending for the wrong reason on Twitter. And then you also have Taysom Hill here. He's a bit of a wild card. Dak Prescott, I think he's back, but the offensive line, right? Three of those guys seem to be hurt every year, and Lionel Collins and Tyron Smith and the other guy. So, I mean, Saquon could be that guy where the volume and how they use him, he's healthy, he's younger, obviously, than some of the other backs in the league. He hasn't played very much, it just seems like. I think Saquon could inch up in the rankings. It just depends on what your philosophy is on drafting running backs. I prefer volume as well as that receiving aspect of it. So I think Saquon could definitely inch up. I think Kamara will be fine, but it's just one of those things is where I wasn't sold on Kamara last year, and he had a really good season. So what do I know, right, Rudy?
You know a lot, man. You know a lot. The only thing we're trying to provide here is we're trying to provide everybody with the absolute best lineup possible for you to beat your competition the way that Rams fan got beat at the game last night by all those Chargers fans. You don't know
Wait
what I'm talking about.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Social media.
They don't look like Rams fans fighting each other. I didn't see the whole thing.
Well, the guy that was fighting the guy that was getting pummeled was in an Aaron Donald jersey.
By the way, there was like 5 against 1, Rudy. So let's not act like he was having other people. That whole thing was weird.
We're trying to help stack the deck like those guys did against that guy. That way you can help win your fantasy football league. All right, last question. Last thing on the top 10 running backs. Again, if you are just joining us, you can see our top 10 running backs on our running back rankings here. Actually, top 15 on this one. We had to squeeze them all in. So these are our top 15 backs. Basically, we're not saying you should, not saying you want to go out and get these guys and you have to get these guys. These are our recommendations. I mean, you may see a name like like we said, a Jonathan Taylor who had a really good season last year, but we have him ranked low. Even a guy like Antonio Gibson, like Gio mentioned for Washington. He's not in the top 10. Could he finish in the top 10? Very possibly. Another guy that I want to talk about real quick, and Will, you're in the great state of Ohio, is Joe Mixon. I mean, Joe Mixon out of Cincinnati, a very explosive guy. And last year, I had Joe Mixon in a couple of leagues, and I got maybe one definitely good game out of him. I got a couple of games where it just put points on the board while everything else just sucked out of Joe Mixon. Burrow back, you've got another receiving threat there in Chase. Joe Mixon doesn't have to worry about Giovanni Bernard this year. So is this the year that we see Joe Mixon jump back into a top 10 running back fantasy wise?
You're asking the wrong guy. I've not been a Joe Mixon fan since he entered the league. I don't know how he does it. He does. I don't know how he does it. For me, this year, I don't see Mixon getting any better. I think he gets worse. I think in this division in the North, they have no offensive line. I've said
Yeah.
that they need to draft offensive line to keep
Yeah,
Burrow
they do.
healthy and happy. He wanted an offensive line. He wanted his boy back so he could throw in touchdowns. But I think Joe
Yeah,
Mixon's going to
that's
have a
true,
solid
man.
year. I think he's going to have a solid year, but I just don't think he's going to be a top 10 guy. They want to try to throw it. They want to try to be like they're trying to turn into Kansas City, but they have no offensive line. One of my good
Yeah.
friends up here, huge Bengals fan. He's like, "You're crazy. We don't need an offensive line. We need Jamar Chase. That's what Burrow wants. We need that." And I just shook my head at him like, "What are you talking about? He can't throw it. He already tore his knee. He's coming back from a knee injury. Does he trust the same guys to let him sit back there and throw it?"
Yeah, I don't see. It's hard to see Mixon in the top 10 this year. I'm
He was
actually going to avoid him.
disappointing last year.
He was real disappointing.
He had that huge game where I think he had 3 touchdowns. The Bengals did draft, I think, one offensive lineman within the first 2 drafts. But really, we talked about in that draft that they should have. I thought they should have won offensive line. Get some guys in. That offensive line was brutal. Watching those games, they couldn't block a soul. It was really bad to watch. They did improve the offensive line in free agency and then getting, I think, Carmen Jackson from Clemson, I think. But they just – I want to believe in Joe Mixon. I really do. But depending on where he's at, I may skip on him this season. But I do like the Bengals offense. I think they could have a really good year.
I can't see Mixon for me. I don't see first 2 rounds. I mean, if he's there in round 4, I'll take the flyer. I can't.
Brady, someone's going to.
Oh,
someone
yeah,
will
someone's gonna
take
take
him in the 3rd. I'm assuming he goes
Yeah.
3rd, late 2nd. It's probably where he's going to go.
Rudy, if it's Mixon or Najee Harris, who are you going to go with? If you have that option.
I'll go with Najee
Why?
Harris.
Why?
Najee Harris, they have a better offensive line than the Bengals right there. And not only that, Mike Tomlin, I mean, you're talking Pittsburgh football, ground and pound football. And let's be real, Ben Roethlisberger isn't a sexy quarterback this year. So they're gonna rely on a lot more ground and pound this year. Najee Harris, really, other than Jalen, is it Jalen Smith or the running back from the backup running back in Pittsburgh? He's going to get all the goal line work too. Yeah, he's going to get all the goal line work too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Najee Harris for me is a no-brainer. I would take him over Joe Mixon pretty much any day of the week.
Yeah, I would too. I just think the Pittsburgh's offensive line did struggle with James Conner, but Conner had looked like he was running with an oven on his back, so I can't really trust that. But I think Pittsburgh will get back to the running game. They got some really good receivers. He's going to get the goal line work, so I think it's more ideal.
Oh, yeah, Connor looks.
They went after linemen in the offseason. They got 3 new guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they're all going back, like you said, ground and pound. But Mixon, I feel like he'll catch the ball a little bit more, but I just don't trust him. Like he's my Saquon Barkley.
That's the point which you made right there. PPR league. I mean, you almost have to go with majority of PPR. Mixon's obviously the choice when it comes to PPR league because he's going to catch more out of the backfield. But I think if I've already got, let's say I'm picking first round and I already got me a Nick Chubb or a Kamara. I kind of got my PPR right there, so I'm going to go more with a Najee Harris before Mixon. But again, that's kind of the debate that a lot of people have. Let's go to the next. Let's go to the next cue card over here because now we're going to go to running back 16 through 30. These are guys that you're looking at towards, maybe 4th, 5th, 6th round possibly because, like I said, these kind of guys are the premium guys that you're still going to get later in the rounds. You could see somebody as high as 3rd or 4th. I mean, right now we're looking at DeAndre Swift from Detroit. Another situation where You lose a quarterback in Matthew Stafford. You gain Jared Goff. How much production can a DeAndre Swift get? Here you see J.K. Dobbins, Chris Carson, Miles Gaskin, Darrell Henderson, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, who was a fantasy stud being drafted last season, is on this list at 22.
Got him a little late there, Rudy. That's pretty low.
And that's what we're gonna get into here. We're gonna get into all that. These rankings are combined rankings and basically the average of where they're being drafted right now. All the way down to Raheem Mostert, who is again should be the starting running back in San Francisco. Having him at 30, there's some concerns there a little bit, but we'll get into a lot of this talk here. Let's start off here. Okay, so 16 through 30, these are the running backs that you get into the nitty gritty. These are the guys that you're drafting, and it's kind of like this is where you make your money right here. You're not going to have the top tier guys. This is where you start making your money when it comes to fantasy football. Starting off first, I want to get into the whole Chris Carson thing. Being at 18, Chris Carson easily, depending on what happens in Seattle this season, could easily jump into the top 15, maybe higher as far as running backs go. As far as Chris Carson goes, him at number 18, do you definitely see? Because this, to me, when I had created this list, I was like, man, a lot of these guys for the ADP is really low, but there has to be some concerns there. Are there any concerns for Chris Carson with Seattle this season as to the reason why his ADP is 18 right now?
Well,
but with him finishing in the top 15, is that a possibility as well?
Well, Rudy, he gets hurt. He has these soft tissue injuries, and Chris historically he's got nagging injuries throughout there. He'll miss some time, but I think he's outstanding. When he's on the field, he's very productive, can also catch out of the backfield. I think he could be easily, Rudy, he can get into the top 12. I think that's how much potential he has. This offense, it's going to look a little bit different. They fired Schottenheimer. They're the passing coordinator from the Rams, so expect a little bit more maybe creativity on that offensive side of the football. But I think Chris Carson can have a very good, productive year. But back to your top 15 real quick, Rudy. I think David Montgomery with the Bears and how Justin Fields looked yesterday, I think David Montgomery could have a really productive season. I know he's 15th on that list, but I could easily see him in the top 10 when the season is over. But Chris Carson, Rudy, he can pound it. He just tends to get hurt. So he has these injuries that kind of pile up throughout the season. He's bound to miss some time, but I think if you draft him in that where he's going, I think it's a great value.
Yeah. Hey, Will, as far as 16 through 30 here, what name on this list just jumps out to you and just tells you, like, it just screams like, man, it's way, way too low for this guy. He can definitely be in the top 15, possibly top 10. There's got to be one guy on here that screams out, because I look at this list and I see a couple of guys and I'm like, man, being out of the top 15 just doesn't make sense. Is that a concern? Yeah, possibly.
I see three guys on the second 15. You got Dobbins. Baltimore's had the best rushing attack in the league. Most of it's Lamar Jackson, but they got rid of Ingram. They want this kid. They kept this kid. They sent Ingram packing to keep Dobbins happy and let him take over the backfield. I love Chris Carson. He gets a lot of volume. He does get hurt, but his major flaw is he puts the ball on the ground way too much. I had him last year, just fumbles. It's one of his big things. And my third guy is Jacobs, another guy that we've already mentioned. He gets a lot of volume, a lot of running backs, especially in this part of the draft, third, fourth, fifth round. You need guys that are going to get some touches, have potential top 12 running back.
Mm-hmm.
Rudy, do you think that because the Raiders got Kenyon Drake, correct?
Yeah.
Could this be a reason why he's dropping a bit? Maybe people think that Drake might eat, and he could, because Jacobs had a pretty heavy workload the past few years, and he's gotten some soft tissue injuries too. So Kenyon Drake could definitely eat, and that could be why he's starting to dip. But watch out for, I think, Michael Carter from the Jets. He's been getting some good praise, and for a Jets backfield that really doesn't have much going on, I think Michael Carter could have a pretty good year with a lot of volume too.
And that's another person I was going to get into. We just saw Zach Wilson last night with the Jets, and he didn't have a really bad outing. It was a decent outing. It wasn't bad at all. He had some decent stats, but Michael Carter is to me that, and I know ETN is up there at 23, but Michael Carter for me, as far as running backs goes, he's that first guy off the board if you're a rookie. I I love everything about Michael Carter with the New York Jets. I think he's going to be the RB1 there. He's going to get all the touches. He's going to get everything, catch out of the backfield, all that stuff that the Jets are going to be looking for and that a fantasy owner is going to be looking for. Michael Carter, to me, is the first guy, the first rookie that I would see going drafted after that. And honestly, Travis Etienne isn't the second guy I would go with off the board as far as a rookie goes. Javonte Williams out of Denver is that next guy that should be going off the board when it comes to rookie running backs being drafted. You're talking about a Denver backfield who, let's be honest, right now it's Melvin Gordon right now at RB1 for them is what they're being listed. I call bullshit on that. I think Javonte Williams is running back one and is going to get a huge workload. And our reason why I'm bringing up Williams too is because we've got a Denver Broncos guy on the panel right now in Mr. Haverland. Well, is it wrong for me to think that Javonte Williams is going to be the absolute man in Denver?
You are not wrong because they've already changed it as of the other day. Javonte Williams is listed as RB1 already.
Perfect.
I mean, this guy, they're already projecting him to get 1,000 yards. They're already saying he should be able to get 1,000 yards this year. I mean, that I don't know if that's going to be 1,000 with that division, to be honest, with Kansas City and the Chargers getting a better defense and Oakland. But they have faith in him. North Carolina running back that got 1,000 yards. Mac Brown is a guy that loves running backs and knows how to groom running backs. And Mac Brown is in North Carolina now. Wait till next year when the next running back comes out from North Carolina, who also had 1,000 yards this past college season. I mean, they put 2,000 yards on the ground between two running backs.
Yeah,
I think Javonte Williams is going to be that guy, but for me, rookies, I'm taking Travis Etienne. I'm taking a flyer. They had him practicing wide receiver. I think this is a league of catching balls. It's a passing league. James Robinson's back there. I don't think they're going to let Etienne take over James Robinson's role, but they're going to have both those guys on the field because they need playmakers in Jacksonville. That's why I'm taking that flyer and this right here. I would take Etienne because I don't know if he's going to be a wide receiver, a tight end, catch it out of the backfield. He might even play quarterback. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. For me, it's like I said, for me, I can see Javonte Williams, and I could go back and forth. It could be either Williams or Carter going one when it comes to running backs off the board for rookies. For me, ETN, it's just kind of that. Okay, I look at all the backfields on those three rookies. James Robinson is more of a threat to ETN than anybody on the backfield for the New York Jets. And now, obviously, with Javonte Williams being RB1 in Denver, there's really no threat to him there. I mean, so that's why I have those two guys coming off the board. The whole Josh Jacobs thing, Gio, that's kind of a head scratcher, like you said. But them bringing in Kenyon Drake, it definitely could eat into the reps for Josh Jacobs. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people outside of like what we talked about on the preview show this past Wednesday, a lot of people aren't really high on the Raiders because when it comes to fantasy value, all you have is Darren Waller. I mean, there's not much sexiness there when it comes to the Raiders, and that's another reason why they're low on Josh Jacobs.
Nelson Aguilar did have about, I think, 8 touchdowns in that offense. I think Darren Waller is obviously a very good – he's one of the best in the league. I think there's some other value here. I think Bryan Edwards, that receiving room for the Raiders, I think they could take a step. Ruggs is obviously there as well. John Gruden's going to sling it around, and Derek Carr played fairly well within what was given in that offense. Josh Jacobs, now they did retool the offensive line. I mean, they had like 3 or 4 guys that are not with that team, so they're going to be probably a younger group up front. But listen, John's going to run the rock. Like, let it be known. They're going to run the football. They're going to take their shots down the field. I think it's going to be a pretty good offense. I mean, I don't know why people are completely down on him. I think John can coach. Now, he's not going to make the playoffs again, but they're going to be competitive and they're going to do all right in this offensive system, I think. So they're going to be good to go. But that receiving room with Ruggs and Edwards, watch out for those two guys.
All right, so you're kind of high on the Raiders a little bit this year as far as fantasy value. So Josh Jacobs, I mean, are we talking he's going to be at least top 15 this year?
I got to think, with a little more maybe fresh legs, with Kenyon taking some of that load, we could see a Josh Jacobs play every game this season and is a touchdown machine when he's in the red zone. I mean, they give him the ball. So I could definitely see top 15. I don't know why people are completely low on them. I get it. Drake's there. The team has lost some players, but you still got Darren Waller coming in. He's going to take targets. So, I mean, I could definitely see top 15.
Maybe because they had a fire sale on the offensive line too.
And that's what I mentioned. They did do a fire sale. They got some young guys in there. So we don't know how well they're going to be up front, but John's going to – listen, John will run. It doesn't matter if he had like 30 carries. They're going to run the football. If they run for like 30, for 50, they're going to run the rock. So they'll be all right.
Yeah. Hey, Will, so all the way down to number 30, Raheem Mostert. San Francisco. Mostert, whatever you want to call it. I had him last year. I still have him in a couple of my my keeper leagues. So the backfield in San Francisco, it kind of depends, and I can see why they have Raheem so low on 30 as far as ADP goes. There's one guy in particular, and that's Trey Lance. I mean, with Trey Lance coming in, you don't know you get the unexpected with Trey Lance, and he had a pretty good performance yesterday. We don't know exactly what Shanahan's thinking as far as replacing Trey Lance for Jimmy G, basically. So is there any concern with Trey Sermon coming in and stealing some of these carries for Mostert? And that may be another reason why Mostert has gone down to 30, because if you look at his performances, you're talking a guy that's easily top 20 back. I mean, easily can really squeeze into a top 15 position. No reason why he couldn't in San Francisco's offense, but having him at 30 is mind-boggling to me. What are the concerns you might have, or what are the concerns you might see as the reason why Mostert is ranked that low?
I think it's health. People don't trust him, and you did hit the nail on the hammer with Trey Sermon. I think Trey Sermon, they're going to feed him like they're going to feed Trey Lance. They're going to slowly put him in and watch him take over by the end of the season. I think Mostert is going to be either hurt, or they're just going to slowly work him out of the plays and put Trey Sermon back there. I mean, look at the resurgence. J.K. Dobbins. They slowly worked him in last year in Baltimore. Another Ohio State back, Ezekiel Elliott. Ohio State has running backs. They're not big names. Zeke was. I think J.K. Dobbins was a decently big name in college football, but Trey Sermon was one of the reasons why Ohio State got where they were with Justin Field having those two bad games last year. It was all Trey Sermon. I think that's going to be your starter by the end of the season. It's going to be a Trey show, Trey Lance and Trey Sermon.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're going to go and get a Raheem Mostert, you definitely want to pick up that flyer on Trey Sermon towards the end of the draft, because he should still be available there, if not even undrafted. Let's go to number 20. The top 20 right here, and he makes the 20th spot. That is one Darrell Henderson Jr. out of the LA Rams. One guy on this panel knows a little bit something about the Rams, because we do consider him the Rambassador. That is Coach Gio. But let's not throw all of our eggs into the Henderson basket, because you and I have been extremely high on another running back out of the Rams organization, and that is one Xavier Jones. So give the people at home some knowledge as far as Henderson goes. Are we going to see Henderson take on the entire workload for the Rams, or are we going to start seeing Xavier Jones get in there a little bit? Maybe he becomes RB1.
Well, listen, the word from camp, the Rams are all in on Darrell Henderson. Does that mean, 20, 30 carries? No, that does not. Darrell Henderson can do a little bit of everything. He can catch, he can receive, he can cut him out wide. If I'm the Rams, and I think they're not going to just put Henderson to the ground, you have Xavier Jones there, a kid that has been talked about. If you draft Henderson, and whether what the Rams do, whether they bring another running back in, I don't know if they'll bring in Peterson or they'll bring in one of these old vets. But if you draft Henderson, to me, you have to draft Xavier Jones simply because Henderson does get nicked up a lot. And in a Rams offense that's going to throw, they're going to run the football. It's going to be pass happy, but they're also going to run. You should have a Rams running back on your team. If you draft Henderson, you go with Xavier Jones. I think Jones could have a pretty decent season, depending on how things roll. But I think the Rams might take what the 49ers do very well is go with the hot hand. I mean, we saw last year with Brown, Cam, and Henderson, they're kind of rotating backs throughout the season. Who's hot? Cam was hot at the end of the year. He would get all the carries. So I think the Rams – also, obviously, Jake Funk is the guy the Rams drafted in the 6-7 round, a running back that was out of Maryland, can catch, kind of like that Danny Woodhead role, but a lot more athletic than Danny Woodhead. So Henderson definitely has fantasy value. He's going to get the bulk. But as Henderson gets hurt throughout the year, Xavier Jones, who knows, Rudy, he could be a guy that takes it and doesn't look back. And now you have a situation like last year where Cam runs with it, and Henderson is still there but dealing with injuries. So you draft Henderson if you can. Go out there and get Xavier Jones. Just stash him on the bench and just leave him there until maybe things could open up.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of Xavier Jones this year. One team that's not on the list that we've got to mention here is the Houston Texans. Obviously, they went and got David Johnson. I mean, they have David Johnson. They went and got a Philip Lindsay. I am just saying.
Don't they have Mark Ingram too?
Yes, they do.
They have like 10 running backs.
I mean, when it comes to running back, honestly, when it comes to everything Houston Texans, I'm pretty much not all in on anything Houston right now. So that was one question that was kind of brought up to me. What's that?
No point intended.
Yeah, none at all. So, and as you can see, Will shaking his head no. Anything Texans, you kind of want to just stay away. Even Deshaun Watson, I am going to smile when that one guy takes Deshaun Watson, and all that, and realize that he's probably not going to end up playing most of this season after everything's said and done.
Rudy, I have one guy. Watch out for Brandon Cooks. He did have over 1,000 yards last season, and he's a receiver that seems to get overlooked, even though he goes over 1,000 like almost every year, like weirdly enough. But I think Brandon Cooks has some value. David Johnson, obviously, they got Philip Lindsay. It's just if I'm someone, just stay away from the Houston Texans. I just think. Just stay away.
Well, yeah. My problem is I have David Johnson in one of my keeper leagues, and I'm like,
wow.
Yeah, we had to get rid of 7 guys. Well, I have him. But I'm not going to keep him. I'm going to try to package him in a trade with somebody to just get him off my bench, and that's something. The other thing we'll talk about throughout the show as well. Let's move on to some tight end rankings here. We're only doing the top 15 because normally in fantasy, you're only got maybe 12, 14 teams at the most in a fantasy football league. So you're not drafting more than one tight end. If you are, you're desperately, desperately in need of one. Normally, if your tight end is on a bye or you get injured, you just go ahead and take a flyer on another one for a week or just fill the position as is. The top tight ends, obviously, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, George Kittle. Rounding out the top 5 is Hawkinson and Mark. It's supposed to be Andrews. I cannot spell, so we're gonna call him the Hispanic version of Mark Andrews is Mark Andres out of Baltimore. So out of the top 5 guys, the whole battle that I've seen in the offseason here on Fantasy Talk is it Kelce or is it Kittle? I hardly ever hear Waller's name in there, and I'm like, there's a certain player in Las Vegas that needs respect put on his name, and I want Gio to put respect on his name because you have been a Waller fan for the longest time. Is he fantasy's best option at tight end, Gio?
I think this is the year that Waller gets to number 1. I think the signs are there. Listen, Travis Kelce's phenomenal. I mean, he is it. I'm not huge on George Kittle this season, depending on who's playing at quarterback, but he's obviously going to be a pretty good one. But I just love Waller, the size, the speed. You can put him out at wide receiver. You can put him at tight end. I think the production – there were games last year, Rudy, where John Gruden says, we're just going to keep throwing to Waller. I mean, it was just unstoppable. I think this is the year that he goes into number one mode and he gets past Travis Kelce. If I'm just barely – because I think Kansas City would be more balanced with the running game this season. So maybe Travis doesn't have as much production as Waller, but they're both going to be really good. But to me, this could be the year, Rudy. I tend to not draft tight ends early normally, but this could be the year that I kind of – if Waller's sitting there early, I could pull the plug.
Yeah, for sure. This could be a good year to actually do that. All right, Mr. Haverland. We see number 7, one Noah Fant. I've drafted Noah in the past. I've had some success with Noah in the past. Not every game, but it kind of shocked me to see the ADP for him overall was in the top 10. I had him pegged maybe at round 10 right there at 10. So is this a surprise to see him at 7 for you? Do you think he's a little too high? Do you think he's a little too low? I mean, where do you see Noah Fant as far as the Denver Broncos go?
I mean, they only drafted like 3 tight ends in 3 straight years. So, I mean, they got to find one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Noah Fant's good. I think he's one of their playmakers. With them struggling with QBs, I think the tight end position is going to get a lot of receptions. I don't know who's throwing the ball. We still don't know who's throwing the ball. They came out and said they're still neck and neck. It's a coin flip on who they want, Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater.
That's not a good sign.
I know. I know.
That's not a good sign.
I'm already into next season already, seeing if we get Deshaun Watson, if he's ever eligible to play again, or we get Aaron Rodgers next year, but that's for another time. I just think with Cortland Sutton, Javonte Williams, my man Jerry Jeudy, I just think Noah Fant is going to get a lot of receptions because Teddy Bridgewater likes to throw it slow. Drew Lock, I think he's in check down mode because he's always scared. He's got pitter patter feet. I think Noah Fant's going to have a better year, more consistent year. But yeah, I was surprised to see him in the top 10. But once I started looking at it and seeing how things played out, I definitely can see him being top 10, maybe top 5.
Wow.
Pretty,
Nice.
I mean,
Okay.
you know how much I have a love affair with Cortland Sutton. Last season, I was telling everybody, draft Cortland, and then he gets hurt. I think he is poised for a big year. I think Jeudy, man, that guy is so smooth. I was watching some videos on Twitter of his route running. Man, it is just
Yes.
– and shout out to Patrick Surtain on a pick 6, Rudy, yesterday. He's just coming into form already. I think the defense in Denver, if they could just get a quarterback there, it'd be very, very interesting in the next few years of what Denver can do.
I think Teddy can lead them, at least for this season. I think Bridgewater's enough. I think he'll get the job done. And, you know, I want to say, I don't want to say it's a playoff team because Will would throw me the finger live on air, but they're going to be competitive. I think Denver will be with Bridgewater. Now,
I just don't like to see that they're both locked up and tied right now, and they don't really know who is kind of – I mean, they may know who is ahead, but I don't like hearing – but then again, as you know, Rudy, coaches lie all the time, so who knows?
I mean, I think Bridgewater will be the guy because he doesn't turn it over. I don't think he's going to turn it over and do all the dumb plays and try to be the hero playmaker that Drew Lock thinks he needs to be when he doesn't. Just don't turn the ball over. You have playmakers. Just do the smart thing. Throw it away. Take the sack. Do whatever you got to do. I think they could, with that extra playoff spot, they could knock on that door, but I'm still not sold on them making the playoffs.
Yeah, and one name that's not on the top 15 that you can potentially see in the top 15 is Mike Gesicki out of Miami. You know, that would kind of surprise me looking at overall of the tight ends. But
Evan Ingram, oof.
Yeah, exactly. Another name that just got into the top 15.
I don't
but
like that.
There's a name in the top 10 that I guarantee everybody is scratching their head on. They're like, who in the F is that? Adam Troutman out of New Orleans. Now, the explanation behind Adam Troutman out of New Orleans is you don't have Drew Brees. And you may think, well, what makes Adam Troutman that much more sexier without Drew Brees? Drew Brees is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Well, that's the reason why Adam Troutman is sexy, because there is no more Drew Brees. This is the ultimate security blanket when it comes to a quarterback, especially one named Jameis and especially one named Taysom. You have no idea what the hell is going to happen in New Orleans. Right now, the Michael Thomas situation is another reason why Adam Troutman is major in New Orleans. Somebody has to catch the damn ball, and that person is going to be Adam Troutman. He's going to get a ton of looks in that New Orleans system. Jameis is going to have to dump off that ball a lot quicker with that offensive line. Kamara is not going to be able to do everything. He's going to need to be freed up some. Adam Troutman is the guy. Can you guys see Adam Troutman still staying in the top 10 at the end of the fantasy season? We'll go to Will on this one first. Adam Troutman, name. Will he be a fantasy relevant name towards the end of the season still?
I think so. Excuse me. I mean, think about it. You said Taysom Hill. What was his gadget position? Tight end. I mean, I think he can help him out. I think he can help him with the routes. I think he can help him with all that insider stuff with him. Taysom Hill being playing both positions. Whether Taysom's taking the snaps or Jameis, he's got an extra coach that can be on the field, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking on it for that extra coach. What made Peyton Manning so good with Dallas Clark and all those other guys? He told them what to do. He told them how to do it. And I think that's what's going to get him Troutman in the top 10 and stay in the top 10 is because he's got that extra tight end on the field that can tell him how to run the route, the timing routes, all that stuff with Taysom Hill. I think Taysom Hill is the key to keep Troutman in the top 10, whether he's throwing the ball or not.
Yeah, for sure. And Gio's going to give me my damn Daniel Jones, look here, because I can see Troutman being in the top 10 as long as, like you said, the production is there, and I think he will get some production. Last night in the preseason opener, he didn't catch any passes. But
okay, that's great, Rudy.
Nothing was targeted his way.
Really good there.
So nothing was targeted his way. But then again, it is whatever. It is whatever. This is the next guy. Who in the hell saw Mark Andrews coming out of nowhere? I mean, again, you have no idea on the tight end position because you could get tight ends just coming out of nowhere. Jack Doyle was not a name until, he started making some plays. I mean, Troutman being in the top 10, I know you probably have him outside of the top 10, right? You probably don't even have him in the top 15.
He's a sleeper for me. I think his opportunities, yes, but definitely not on my top 15. But could he maybe? The tight end position is so weird. It's one of those things where guys could just come and go. They could have a good few weeks and not. But Troutman's definitely outside my 15. And I don't want to be a homer, but I think you have Tyler Higbee a little bit too low there.
That's homer all day, man.
Because Tyler Higbee isn't established. You're putting Troutman, who has not been established, over a Higbee, even a Jonnu Smith. I think Logan Thomas can have a very good season in Washington. So, and Evan Ingram, I can't with him anymore. I tried. I really have tried. He's just a disaster every year. And he drops passes all the time. Yeah, watch. The moment I say this, watch. 3 touchdowns first game.
Yeah, but Kyle Rudolph's there too, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah.
It's just weird to me. Evan dropped, and then I think he dropped a big pass last season in a big game. It's just, but I think Tyler Higbee and what Stafford does with the tight end position, as he's been doing with T.J. Hawkinson last season or the past few years, really, I think Tyler Higbee can have a big season. And in dynasty leagues, just to throw a name out there, the backup tight end, one of the backup tight ends for the Rams, Jacob Harris, 6'6", runs a 4.3. He's been a talk of camp. He could be a guy that might eat into some of his targets. But Higbee, definitely over whoever Rudy said, some guy named Adam.
Adam Troutman. All right. I guess we're going to just let you, stay all over the Rams because you are the Ram ambassador. So we'll go ahead and let you launch your successful team there. But there is also another 6'6" guy out there who I am starting to know very well. And that is one Kyle Pitts. Number 6 right there on the list. Kyle Pitts, and you know me, Gio. I am not high on Matt Ryan at all. I don't like Matt
You've
Ryan.
never liked Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I have until the whole Super Bowl debacle, but I've never been huge on Matt Ryan. But this year, I actually opened the screen door for Matt Ryan. I haven't opened up the front door, but I've opened up the screen door, and I'm considering letting him back into my house because of Kyle Pitts. I think the production of Kyle Pitts with the exit of Julio Jones, Kyle Pitts is going to be that next big thing in Atlanta. Now they have Calvin Ridley, but when you're talking in the red zone, Kyle Pitts is going to be the man right there. You're going to see, I think, a lot of jump balls his way. He's going to get, I mean, you're going to see almost like Tony Gonzalez type production when it comes to him in Atlanta. So, I am definitely taking Kyle Pitts, and this is my own homer coming out here. I'm definitely taking Kyle Pitts above TJ Hawkinson, and I'm taking Kyle Pitts above Mark Andrews, or in this case, Mark Andres. So those two guys are falling for me. Kyle Pitts to me is definitely the fourth best tight end in this draft where you want to draft a tight end in this fantasy rankings. But I mean,
I think TJ takes a step back.
Hawkinson, yeah. With Stafford gone, definitely.
I think there's a step back there.
Yeah, because he has Jared Goff, and Jared Goff is a crappy quarterback, as you should know. You've had to put up with him.
Well, I mean, but also, you know who's very odd too? The quarterback the coach of the Lions, Dan Campbell, is always saying these outrageous stories. He should be worrying about his team and how bad they're going to do this season.
Yeah. Hey, Will, anyone on this tight end list that I want to get with you on, anyone on this tight list here that, you know, you feel could maybe be higher than the top 15, or maybe somebody outside of the top 15 that could sneak into the 15? I mentioned Mike Gesicki earlier, who I expect to have, you know, a pretty good year this year. Anybody else out there that you might see that could surprise everybody, you know, going inside the top 15 or even the top 10 possibly?
I mean, honestly, I don't even look at anybody below the top 10 tight ends when I'm doing fantasy. I mean, you only have a handful. If you don't get those elite guys, the other guys are just like, all right, this will fit. It's my turn. I need to fill a position for me. A tight end can't win or break it unless you have a Kelsey, a Waller, or a Kittle. The name I'm interested in is Everett. He's in Seattle now.
Yeah.
I was writing down everything, notes. I put down the Rams because I'm just used to him being at the Rams. I had him once. He was on the Rams. I didn't even see that move. I think maybe he could move up into the top 10, if not more, just because they're pass happy. They have a decent running back. I mean, I don't know. I think he might be able to do something in Seattle. Now he doesn't have to fight with Higbee, right? I mean,
yeah,
you split that up.
Yeah. Yeah, for Everett.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's the name that popped out to me. I mean, I'm shocked every year how low Evan Ingram keeps dropping. Like, was he a one-hit wonder?
It seems like it. It seems like
he keeps every year. It's like drop. I think Austin Hooper, Rudy. I know he didn't have the best of year, but two years ago he was top 4 tight end in the league. Interesting to see what the Browns can do. They have a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. So, but I think he could be an interesting look at if you're really looking for a tight end.
Well, I'm going to give you guys 2 names because we're almost here at the end of the show here. We got a couple of seconds left, but we'll extend it a little bit. I'm going to give you guys 2 names here as far as the tight end position goes. And the only reason why I bring them up is because they haven't seen a 1-2 punch like this there in a while. And that is a New England Patriots with a Jonnu Smith and a Hunter Henry. Last time we saw a 2 tight end combo like that was pretty killer, wasn't it? With Hernandez and Gronkowski.
Oh, well, that's a pretty good point you went there, Rudy. Killer.
Yeah, I thought I'd throw that in there as a killer. But you know, hey,
the ball?
Well, Bill Belichick, yeah, you're right. Who's going to throw the ball? But I mean, you've got Cam Newton, who I'm not super high on. Mac Jones, I'm not super high on right now. But we've seen what Bill can do with a 2 tight end set like that with very athletic tight ends. Johnny Smith and Hunter Henry were two of the more better tight ends in the past few years. So can we see some really good production out of those two guys real quick before we go? Let's just go around the horn. Will, real quick, as far as the New England Patriots go, can those two tight ends be a difference maker for the Patriots this year? It's not like they have a whole lot of receivers out there that are worth a damn.
I was excited when I saw Bill Belichick go back to a two tight end system, but then reality set in. They don't have running backs. They don't have wide receivers. I mean, how much can they do in that division? I hope. I love Jonnu Smith, but Hunter Henry, he gets hurt a little bit. He struggles, as you know, down there in Atlanta. I just don't see it. I think Bill Belichick's going backwards he's trying to find his Tom Brady and trying to set up his team the way he was when he was so dominant. I just don't see it happening this year.
Yeah, Gio, real quick, what do you got on the New England Patriots? Is this going to be a murderous row of tight ends for the Patriots?
I think it could be a week-to-week type of thing. It could be Jonnu for weeks. It could be Hunter Henry. Could be both of them. Cam Newton, I think, can be a serviceable quarterback. And that offense, they get the ball out quick. But as Will said, Henry gets nicked up. And Jonnu last season was very weird. He'll get a touchdown, but, no yards. It was just games where Tennessee just would not use him. So I'm hoping to see more Jonnu and Henry just get used to the best of their abilities. But it could be a week-to-week type of thing. I think they'll be fine. I think Cam will get them the ball. The problem is, in the red zone, Cam's going to want to keep it and go score a touchdown. So for tight end purposes, will those two guys get enough volume at touchdown as well to be even serviceable, maybe some of the top 3, top 4 guys at the tight end spot?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's almost like having 2 running backs that split time. It's who's going to be that guy this week?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, like I said, man, we're coming to the end of the show here. We've covered all the running backs and the tight ends for the rankings. Next week, we're going to get into quarterback and wide receiver talk. Pretty much fill out your.
Are we doing a show for kicker?
Yeah, we'll do that show at 2:00 in the
Young
morning
Hoku
on a Wednesday night.
Yes.
Or something. We'll do that.
Hey, but that Young Hoku is he's pretty good.
Watch your mouth, man. Watch your mouth. And do me a favor, Gio. Can you return his cleats, please? I know you're the one that took them.
I remember reading that story, and he just wanted his cleats back. Did he ever get his cleats, Rudy?
I don't have them.
So.
I checked my closet. I would have stolen them too, but I don't have them. I would have checked my closet.
Maybe a Joe Garcia stole them. I don't know.
Oh, shout out to Joe Garcia stealing cleats now. That's not a good thing, man. So, yeah, we'll get into some quarterback and some wide receiver rankings next week here on the Fantasy Countdown. After that, it's draft time. I mean, pretty much all the drafts are going to get started next week. So, we're here to give you the best possible advice we can give. We definitely got a bunch of guys on here that have played fantasy for a very long time, been very successful at fantasy football. So, I know, and I'm not making a shout out to these guys, in a negative way, but I've always said, you can also catch the fantasy gods out there. But why listen to gods? Because gods can be defeated when you can listen to us, and we're immortals. So we're fantasy immortals here. Immortals cannot be defeated. No, shout out to those guys out there, Michael and Brandon. They do a really good job as well. But we'll be bringing y'all some quarterback rankings, some wide receiver rankings next week here on the Fantasy Countdown. Same time, every single Sunday, 10 to 11. After that, it's pretty much just giving you your week-to-week lineups, who's going to be the best guys to start week to week. We'll do some rankings and as well as some daily fantasy advice, because we all pretty much do daily fantasy here as well. And I struggle a little bit on daily fantasy. I'm good and I'm
it's
bad.
Tricky, man. It's
depends. Yeah. But
it's
this is where Adam Troutman comes in. I mean, highly ranked guy. You might be able to get him for a couple of thousand.
I put a bet in for the Texans coach to win Coach of the Year. It's probably not obviously going to happen, but I thought the odds in the money return could be decent.
The Texans couldn't win against the Pee Wee football team this year.
Hey, if they win 4 games, that's Coach of the Year for me.
If they win 4 games, you should just put them in the Super Bowl. There's no way.
Could there be a scenario where they're actually an 8-9 win team?
if you're
No.
on Madden and playing against not the computer, just putting player 2 and you're just dominating the game.
Because
the whole time.
it's a new staff, right? A lot of talk on the Texans, and we've seen in past years where teams come together and they surprise some folks. So I'm not saying the Texans will make the playoffs, but they've been battered. They've been talked about this entire offseason, how bad their football team's going to be. We could see a Texans team surprise some people. Every year, Rudy, we see it. We see a team that just jumps out. Last year we saw the Buffalo Bills. We thought they were a year behind, and they explode. So not saying they're going to be the Bills, but watch out for those Texans. You never know.
Yeah, you never know. And just like everybody else, real quick on an NBA note, you never know what the Spurs are going to do. Everybody's arguing on Spurs Twitter over that. So
Well, Spurs Twitter's been up. They get a little high, they get a little low. They never seem to be very even keel.
yeah, never. So for Will Haverland, who exited a little bit early here, Coach Gio, Rudy Campos Jr., till we see you guys next time on the Fantasy Countdown next week from 10 to 11 here. On Sundays, we will go through the quarterback and wide receiver rankings. And after that, it's all fantasy, man. We're going to talk all lineups and everything, give you guys the best advice as possible. So like I've said before, where we make fantasy wins a reality, this is the Fantasy Countdown brought to you by Project Spurs and DraftKings. Go get that DraftKings account right now. Start getting ready for the fantasy football. Listen to us before you do to get the best advice possible. So for Coach Gio, Will Haverland, Trey Collis, Austin Hartsfield, this is Rudy Campos Jr. We will see you guys next week.